Welcome modelers to my propeller shaft assembly video for the Trumpeter 1 to 200 scale Titanic Part 1. This video shows how I prepared the wing and center propeller shaft castings so I could fit a 3/16 inch outside diameter stainless steel tube insert for the propeller shafts. The picture shows parts A6 and A11, the port wing propeller shaft casings. The first step is to cut off the nib where the propeller would be glued to the casing. Now, the whole purpose of these extra steps is to make a working propeller system with motors, but it will not be a remote control boat put in the water. This will be a working display model only. I'm not sure yet if the rudder will be a working part, but the propellers will. Next, I drilled a small hole in the center of part A6 and then glued parts A6 and A11 together. With the wing propeller casting halves together, I could now gradually drill the hole bigger and bigger, making sure the hole remained centered in the casing. Once the hole was large enough for the 3/16 inch tube to fit snug in the hole, I took a 3/16 inch round file and reamed out the entire length of the wing casting so that the 3/16 inch stainless steel tube would fit the entire length of the wing casting assembly on center and not cocked off to one side or the other. And once the wing casting assembly was done, I test fitted it with a 3/16 inch steel tube to make sure it fits snug but not tight. Next, I took the 1/8 inch brass rods that I will be using to be the propeller shafts, which I had gotten at the hobby store, and I needed to reduce their diameter to around 3 millimeters. I did this by clamping one end in a hand drill and used the drill like a lathe. I took sandpaper and went up and down the rods as the drill ran until the rods got to size and fit inside the 3/16 inch steel tube. It took about an hour for each rod, so this was pretty time consuming. But once the size was right, I then polished the brass rods smooth, and now I had a smooth working propeller shaft. Next, it was time to punch some holes into the hull where the wing propeller shaft castings would fit on the hull. I first drilled several small holes in the hull where the 3/16 inch tube entered from the wing propeller casing. Then I enlarged the hole so that the 3/16 inch steel tube would fit without any interference through the hull. And this video shows the outside, and then the next video shows an inside view of the hull. Next, I glued the wing propeller casing to the hull. Once dry, I test fitted the steel tube and it fit snug but not tight. I repeated the process for the other side, then test fitted both propeller shafts to the motors. The motors sit just right with no binding effect on the brass rod or steel tube. Next up was the center propeller shaft. I cut a small section of the rudder support off so I could drill a hole in the center of the propeller shaft outlet. I gradually enlarged the hole to 3/16 of an inch and made sure the drill bits remained level so the steel tube would be parallel to the bottom of the hull when installed. Next, I built some bulkheads to support and keep the propeller shafts assembly parallel to the hull floor, and test fitted with the motors. Once I was satisfied with the position of the tubes, I hot glued them to the hull and bulkheads. You can see here in this pic that I have marked the location of the bulkheads in the hull. The first bulkhead sits at around 127 millimeters or 83 feet 4 inches in scale as measured from the rear perpendicular, which is the rear rudder support. And the next bulkhead sits at 261 millimeters or 171 feet 3 inches in scale. Next, I puttied around the wing propeller shaft castings to make the connection to the hull more smooth. After sanding and some paint, the finished wing propeller shaft casings turned out nice. And with the propeller test fitted, the propeller shaft assembly looked complete on the outside. In the next video, I will show some video I shot of the shafts and motors before my camera went on the fritz. There may be a little repeating of this assembly, but just a little. But I explain a little more of the details involved in assembling the propeller shafts, the motors, and putting them in their bulkheads. So stay tuned for part 2.